let's dive into the Q&A. We've got all of our presenters on. Jenna, Sean, Anne, thank you. Keith may have fallen off as well, unfortunately. No? Okay. Well, the first question I'd like to go to Anne. I did miss your presentation, Anne. However, I have seen it with you, so I did have a particular question on it, if you don't mind. The first one is around the length of time that Ørsted have taken to completely pivot the business, right? And from memory, it's about 11 years or so up to today. Now, over the past few years, there's been an increased amount of investment, an increased amount of preferable legislation. There's more knowledge around that. So if Ørsted was starting the pivot or the transition today, how much of that 11 years do you feel would be cut out with all of the recent positive stuff that's happened around wind?
To be honest, I don't think we could have done it in any different way. We actually decommissioned our first wind farm a couple of years ago. So the first offshore wind farm we built was almost 25 years ago. And I think where we are today is really built on the learnings that we've had. I have several colleagues that have been here in the company for many years, and they say if we knew what we knew today, there was some of the wind farms that we have built that we wouldn't have built today. So I really think also from our knowledge about data, we have really learned during this journey.
Okay, thank you very much. And I'm just sifting through the questions. Sean, maybe one for you, if you don't mind, before I hand over to Alessandra, who's going through the other questions. Sean, could you share your thoughts on the importance of maintaining an authoritative spatial database to aid in the use of suitability assessments and environmental impacts? Or maybe just spinning it around the other way, if you didn't have an authoritative spatial database, how much more effort would be required by different parts of the business?
Sure, yeah. I'll first maybe speak on the port assessment side of things. I'll say first that one of the major benefits to maintaining an authoritative spatial database is really the ability to reproduce tasks or workflows. I realized pretty early on in my time doing these types of projects that I found myself tracking down a lot of the same information for the same ports kind of over and over again. And that was really because while we were using GIS to develop these kind of sets of attributes, they were often stored in other databases kind of spread across the company, really. And so, yeah, so having a central place to keep everything was really hugely important for efficiency's sake. And really as an added benefit, the more projects you work on, the more comprehensive it becomes, and the more useful that central spatial database becomes.
Thank you, Sean. Alessandra, I think you've been combing through some of the Q&A as well.
Yeah, I'm not sure if Jenna can hear us. I see your video. Jenna, can you give it a test word or two?
Hi, I can hear you.
Okay, we may not be able to see you, but we can hear you. So, Jenna, we had this question. We often see, pretty negative headlines between the public and energy companies. So have you noticed that, the implementation of your system for the public, to create more knowledge greatly available, has this bridged any gaps between the often contentious engagements of renewable energy development?
Yeah, so I think, most importantly, we as the Northeast Ocean Data Portal team strive to make authoritative data available to everyone. We also, go to great lengths to, make it known that we have new data sources available, or we've updated a certain data source so that everyone's on the same page. And so hopefully we can bridge those gaps. I think additionally, we take feedback from users as readily as they will provide it, and try to address any questions, by updating our documentation or information about a layer, just so that it's clear and, vetted by the public and vetted by our users, and just try to keep everyone on the same page, so that if there are gaps, ask us about them, and we'll try to address them, and just simply by providing the data in a way that's usable and understandable to everyone.
I was on mute. Great, thank you. Let's see, Lisa, can you hear us? And may not be able to hear her audio. How about Malcolm?
I'm here.
Okay, great, Malcolm. So I had this question come through our Q&A. I thought this was great. So first of all, hook 'em horns. I'm a Longhorn myself. But can you talk about how you got linked up with geothermal, and how quickly were you able to bring GIS into those workflows?
Sure. I came to geothermal actually through my innovation job when I was at Shell. And the innovation part of Shell was actually split into two: the oil and gas innovation side and the renewable energy, new energy space. And it was clear to me from day one that the new energy space was expanding and the oil and gas side was contracting. And I came into the oil and gas side, so I wanted to figure out how I could jump from the oil and gas to the renewable energies and bring my tool set with me, geological and GIS. And so I decided to try to figure out what that would be, and it turns out to be geothermal. And I did it by interviewing people inside Shell and outside of Shell, asking them what are the top 10 problems. And you saw in my presentation that top 10 list. That was the list that I chose to attack using innovation. How can I solve those problems so that geothermal can expand? And that's how I came to Ever, because I felt Ever met a lot of those problems. The GIS aspect of it, to me, is just part of my day-to-day work. I was using GIS from day one, because one of the big problems with traditional geothermal is it's limited in extent, geographic extent, to the sort of the Ring of Fire, about 10% of the Earth, Iceland, Hawaii, et cetera. And so I was trying to figure out how to expand that, and what characteristics do I need to look for to expand that footprint to geothermal anywhere. And so GIS has been a part of it from day one, and surprisingly, amount of it was already in the Shell oil and gas database. Sedimentary thicknesses, rock types, a lot of oil well penetrations, etc.
Great, fantastic. Thank you for that. We have a large amount, as Billy and I run Renewables for Esri, a large amount of questions from oil and gas companies wanting to know how they can harmonize their portfolio. And then, of course, this is an area for all of us to personally grow. So we get a lot of questions on personal development too. So thank you so much for sharing your story today. We really appreciate it. And let's see, Billy, did we have any other questions, or the other speakers be able to join us here?
I wanted, there was a question that I thought was useful for Marit and for Malcolm. Marit, I don't think is on. Unfortunately, she hasn't had her time in the sunshine today. But I might just ask it so we can get Malcolm's view, if that's all right, Malcolm.
Yes.
And apologies, I'm just going to read off just so I don't miss the important parts. So Malcolm, we've seen clear analogies to oil and gas, and we've clearly known about circulating hot fluids for a long time. So what is the difference now? And I think you've just touched upon this previously. What were the barriers of entry to geothermal previously?
Sure. I'll take the second half of that question first, because I really talked about the technical barriers already. That top 10 list of challenges, those were all technical challenges, more or less. But I ran into a couple of challenges in the geothermal world at Shell that I thought are informative. One is that because we were trying to do geothermal projects in the new energies part of the business, They were trying to compare a geothermal project to a solar project or a wind project in terms of the economic value to the company. And it's comparing apples and oranges. You know, a geothermal project looks like an oil and gas project. There's a long lead in, there's a big capex, the payback is 10 years or more. And on the oil and gas side, wow, those are good projects. But compared to a wind and solar project, the people who were evaluating them couldn't give geothermal a fair shake. So one of the things that we've learned is try to figure out how to fit into the decision-making process at your company was a substantial challenge. And getting people to listen to an idea when their background is all surface and wind or PV was a substantial challenge. One of the what were the barriers? So I would say that was a barrier. What has changed? I think the landscape in geothermal has changed in 2 years, or even less, maybe 1 year. And part of it is this closed loop thing and new drilling technology. I think that is, like I said, the top number one on my list was drilling technology. And there have been enormous changes in the drilling technology space that I think is part of the key to breaking geothermal loose. That's what's different. The other is the recognition of the fact that electricity isn't the only product. When you're competing on electricity, you're competing with wind and solar, which can be negative at times. And so if you can get to producing heat directly, you don't pay a conversion penalty. You go direct to the customer, and it's much more efficient use of that resource, of that energy. So to me, the things that are breaking it loose are the lowered cost of drilling and the application to new markets.
Perfect. As detailed as always. Thank you very much, Malcolm. Alessandra, I think we have Keith back. Do we have any for Keith?
Yeah, we do. And thanks, Keith, again for joining. So you may not be able to discuss specifics here, but can you kind of speak to the financial return on investment that your real-time workflows and tools provide to Enel? Maybe like impact on safety of employees out in the field?
Sure. I can give you a bit of an overview of how this provides value to the organization. I can't speak to specific figures for obvious reasons, but essentially the reason why we started creating this dashboard, well, first off, I started doing it because I wanted a really good use case for GeoEvent Server, and then an actual business case happened to come up right after that. And it's that our project investors now are asking us to do inspections within 72 hours of a lightning strike. So we now have this contractual obligation to capture this information and act on it. And, the project investors are looking out for their own end as well to minimize risk. So in the same context, this applies to us as well, as we are partial owners and operators of the plant. And so, the way this helps reduce risk, is I alluded to in the presentation, is by the early detection of damages. Having lead time to schedule repairs can reduce the cost dramatically, usually 20% or more. And being able to then also reduce the scope of those repairs further reduces the cost. And they can have a better understanding of how to fit that in with the limited amount of dollars that they have to do repairs on an annual basis. The second big part of this is warranty claims. We now have better information to be able to defend any warranty claims we may need to make against the blade manufacturers for faulty lightning attenuation systems and things like that. We now have the ability to demonstrate how many times a turbine's been struck by lightning. As often that's been the case in the past, where, they'll allude to that, it was external damages and not an actual defect. So this gives us better information to prepare to defend in a warranty claim, as well as to optimize our repair schedules. As far as the health and safety aspects of it, we're not using this system currently for that purpose. We're using a dedicated system through DTN, but we're currently in the process of replicating that functionality using this same alerting system here to be able to provide those life safety alerts, so our personnel vacate the turbines and seek shelter when lightning storms are approaching. It's the same concept, but you have to also track when the events start and end. And so we've just finished development of those processes, and they need to be implemented. So it's functionality coming in the future, which will tie all this together.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Keith. Just looking at the clock, we're getting pretty close to the end of our session today. So I'll jump in here and maybe close off the renewables track for this year's PUG. We hope you found it insightful. And apologies again for some of the technical difficulties that we saw with the presenters and with myself as well. We will, after this, ensure that anything that was missed does get posted onto the website. Certainly Marit's presentation on geothermal, which is fantastic. We will make sure that that is done. So in closing, I would like to leave you with a number of different thoughts. The first one is around the PUG being such a useful forum. One of the reasons PUG has developed such a following over the 30 years that it's been around is how the sharing and the collaborativeness of the users and the members has surfaced to the top at every single conference and in between. We certainly feel, Alessandro, myself, and the Natural Resources team, we certainly feel that there is a similar opportunity to build a community for the renewable energy field specifically. One that does have an identity of its own, rightly so, but also one that is collaborative with other related communities. Oil and gas is an obvious one, oceans, environment, utilities, engineering and construction, as we heard from Sean earlier on as well. So I'd like to encourage you to do two things. First of all is reach out to others within the renewable energy sector. I know it's a little bit harder at the moment, we're in a virtual world. However, every single presentation today had the contact details of the presenter at the very end. Now, putting commercial sensitivities aside, I am pretty sure that everybody in the audience, all of the presenters, are more than happy to share, be collaborative, talk about the challenges and how they overcame those challenges. And ultimately what that does is that it helps all of us get to where we want to a little bit quicker. The other thing I'd like you to do is reach out internally to all of these new different business units. We here all know the value that GIS can bring, but understandably they might not. So let's get them to come along on this journey with us to a more sustainable world. Finally, and I do realize we're getting close to lunch or dinner, depending on where you are in the world, there's a number of groups that I would like to thank, and these are in no particular order. First of all, it's the unsung heroes from an Esri perspective. We have a huge team backstage, and we've seen them beavering away whilst we've had some of the technical issues today. But aside from that, the amount of effort that they, our marketing teams, our industry solutions team with Jeff and Brian, and our solution engineers help us to pull all of this material together with the 486 different moving cogs. It is a huge undertaking internally. Secondly, I'd like to thank all of the presenters. Having worked with you and spoken to you over the last few weeks, either via Alessandro or myself, we appreciate how much effort you have put into putting your recordings or your presentations together, and also being available after this for people to reach out to as well. So thank you very much. And finally, and by no means least, of course, it's to everybody who's joined today to listen in. We hope that you found it beneficial, insightful, inspiring in certain cases. And the Natural Resources team, Alessandra and myself, look forward to supporting you in all of your efforts going forward. So thank you very much.